Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Leelas of Love. Behind me, you see the hands of Frank moving already. I am very, very, very happy and grateful that you are here. If you feel moved to participate or ask any questions during the live streaming, then do so. I will keep track of them and pass them on to Frank. Also, what would be nice to inform you of who is also here physically. So we have Ugo, Bernardi, we have Menke, and we have Marielle, Frank's intimate, and myself. And behind me, the main character, really, the main storyteller of tonight, Frank Marrero. So, well, enjoy profoundly the stories that are going to be shared tonight. I will give stage to Frank.
Thank you. I hope you get to go to Naitamba soon and bask in his daylight. So I'm happy to serve this and always speak about Beloved. Let me first speak to Beloved and say thank you for unendingly, for the blessings and the embrace. I could sing Amazing Grace. That some poor wretch as me had such blessings. And so in that mood, thank you, Beloved. I'm dead without you. In fact, that's a good Leela. One time, Bridal Manny was with Beloved in Fiji, and they were watching TV. I think this is at Charlie's place. They were watching TV and watching Cliff Divers. And as you know, I used to do crazy things in order to feel before Beloved taught me to feel, so I didn't need to do crazy things. And they were watching Cliff Divers, and Beloved, he said, out of the blue, just turned to Brian, who we were housemates at the time, he just says, "Ever wonder how Frank survived?" So I know that I belong to him. I would not be here, that's for sure. I think Leelas are best, or one of my favorite Leelas is Leelas that both have a lesson, and of course all Leelas just that you can just gaze upon him, because if you can gaze upon him, you know that's the Alpha and the Omega. That's everything, and but it's also useful from time to time to have his actual play of teaching, and because has universal use, as he used to say, his coins. And when he says it's his coins, he's referring to the 19th century sage Sai Baba, who would carry around a little purse of coins, and he was often seen, taking them out when nobody was looking, apparently, and just polishing one another and talking to them. And he said, this coin is my Marielle, this coin is my Ugo, this coin is my Marielle, this coin is my Josh. And so he would have his attention on his devotees through these coins everywhere. And Arida said that the people who were in front of him at the moment were his coins of the moment. So I hope the lessons that I got will be useful for everyone. I want to start with in that light, the lesson, the Leela that has had most impact to me on a day-to-day basis. And I was struck on a day-to-day basis, it's a theme, because I was struck in his book called The Enlightenment of the Whole Body, an essay called The Creative Use of Life Frustration. We're all experience frustration all the time. Well, how do we make creative use of that? If we could use, hey, I've got plenty of that. If I could use that to remind me of him. And in that essay, The Creative Use of Life Frustration, he said, you will live a life of love. And this is how he defines a life of love. Creative participation in the theater of life frustration. Creative participation in the theater of life frustration. or self-transcendence. He says, this is a purifying fire that moves us toward the release of self rather than fixed survival. Frustration must begin to awaken us at the heart. And that heart-generated responsibility and nothing else must become our essential means of ecstasy. Only then am I a human being, real, moral, and true. So if we can take life frustration and embrace it with his arms and be embraced by it with his arms, that's what I hope this Leela was for me, and I hope it can be for you too. I remember once upon a time, Beloved was talking about, you all think that you want a life without frustration. Everything's easy and you're la 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 along. He says, no, it's a succession of frustration. That he says ultimately the seventh stage is the ultimate frustration. He says you could not tolerate my breakfast. So enough said. The Leela, after the Hurricane Iwa of 1982, November 23rd, today is the 23rd, on 1982, the Hurricane Iwa destroyed the sanctuary. Everything except his house. 1982. At that time, it was the largest hurricane of the century. Well, that's another Leela, or available in Monkey's Tale. But this is afterwards. It's about 5 acres. What's that? 3 hectares? I don't know what it is. It's not huge. Sanctuary there, and the jungle is all softwoods. The beautiful trees in the sanctuary are hardwoods. They're very distinctively different, but everything was just ripped to shreds. There wasn't a leaf on any tree in the tropics. Just shredded all the leaves. There was every road was covered with trees. Nobody had water for 7 days till they could open the roads again. And when they did open the roads, it was my job to clear the sanctuary. Now I did this 2 or 3 truckloads a day till February 3rd. From November 23rd, that's how much junk was on that little sanctuary, just limbs and shreds everywhere. Well, I was, soon after I was picking up just the truck stacked up with high walls, and the Army had come through with one of these machines like a cow catcher that just pushes the stuff out of the side. Every road had just piles along the side of it, but you could finally get through. And I was making a run to a nearby improvised dump schoolyard, taking limbs and stuff. Now the limbs at the sanctuary, being hardwood, have a different quality than softwoods. In the same way an oak would have different quality than a sycamore or a pine. And most of the jungle there is softwoods. So I'm driving along, and I'm in this old jalopy of a truck, and I see that one of the limbs, which was about the size on the small end of about my thumb and maybe about smaller than my wrist on the long end, about 2 meters long, 2.5, bounce off the top of the truck, bounce, it hit the road. I saw this in my rearview mirror, and it scuttled off to the side in the other piles on the side of the road. And I saw it and went, okay, good, it went off the road, no problem. And I went and made my dump. Well, Beloved had decided that he wanted to go survey the damage on the island. And he was soon after me, a few minutes later. And when I got back to the sanctuary, there was a message. He'd sent somebody back or something extreme. It says, tell Frank that he dropped a stick, that he should go back and get it. It's from our sanctuary. He should take full responsibility. And I thought, what are you talking about? I'm a busy man. Literally, it's a stick this little, this long, off the side of the road in a pile. muddy pile. It wasn't like it was in somebody's front yard or anything. And I thought, how absurd to waste my time. I've got so much to do. This is just the first day. I did it for weeks after that, and I can't believe it. I'm pissed even that beloved would want to make a point. So I accepted. I bowed to the Guru. Thank God. And I went back and got the stick and made it the next run. Didn't think anything else about it. And then that night, beloved tells me, he says, you know, you're a slimy creature. He tells me. He says, you know, you like to skirt the edges. Yeah, it really didn't matter. You're right. But you have to learn to take complete responsibility for everything you touch. If you touch it, you make sure it goes all the way. And I went, oh shit, I just got nailed, right? And I just got read my rights and my freedom actually, and so I took it to heart, and now every day, many times a day, I drop something accidentally, and every time I drop something, I reach down, and it's a moment of remembrance. The creative use of life frustration. You want to go, oh, Fred, drop the so-and-so, right? That's what you naturally or by impulse will want to do. And I'm pretty good at it, but I wouldn't say every time, but I'm very consistent. When I drop something and I reach down and I find myself in a sulk of, drop my fork or whatever, as we do, I go, creative use of life frustration. And I remember how wonderful it feels to be alive. I remember him telling me to go back and get that stick. I remember him telling me to take absolute responsibility for everything I touch. I remember him. And so I turned life frustration into remembrance. And I try to then extend that into other things, like if I'm, it comes up to a level where the frustration makes me notice, and usually I'm just, what are people waiting for? It's people slow. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to wait here for a while. Oh yeah, I can remember him. So to creatively use life frustration to remember him is a good remembrance. It's a good form. When in the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna was given the great vision of the divine person, and then suddenly he was he said, oh, as beloved likes to say, he's shit in his pants, and then. And said, oh, please show me your two-armed form again. And so Krishna showed him his two-armed form again. Arjuna was overwhelmed by the vision. He said, how am I going to remember who you really are? I wanted you to see the two-armed form. That vision was too much for me. And Krishna says, well, and basically use your life to remind you of the divine person. He says, of heavenly bodies, I am the sun and the moon. Every time you see the sun or the moon, think of me. Of the rivers, I am the Ganges. Every time you drink from the sacred river, think of me. And he went on and on like that into the different facets of life. And that's kind of what we need to do, is to have everything be a reminder of remembrance. So, to me, that is, if I had to tell everybody one Leela, that would be the one, is the stick of the master. Got me again. Because I picked that up, and then I learned the lesson of the creative use of life frustration. So, I hope everybody can take a big breath of this with me and learn the same. Another Leela along these lines of one of the more important things that happened to me that I think is a universal lesson, or could be universalized, is it was the day after Christmas, and I had made beloved a secret, like I did something in secret around him, but I was under the illusion that I'd made him this secret deck overlooking, on a cliff overlooking the river, and it was 10 meters at least high above the river, and he was during our Christmas celebration, he said, let's go see it now, when he heard about it. I said, tomorrow. He goes, oh yeah, tomorrow. Very sweet, acting like me. And so the next day I get a message that he's coming to see my deck, wants to see my deck. And so I race up and I get a blanket. And the day before, the Feast of God at Everybody Day it was a different look. Let me just briefly go back to it, but because it's a Leela, you can find other places. But it was a day of perfect heaven. I mean, there we were with God himself. He was sitting at a table, giant table, and we all just would naturally move one at a time to be with him personally, but the rest of the time he was with us all, or giving himself to you personally. And we would just slowly, in a kind of a orderly dance, but having one-on-one time with him. And he was giving out gifts and kissing us. And I remember coming up to him and telling him this long, self-involved story. He was just like, he's like a young boy, a 4-year-old at Christmas, just with you, obviously reflecting me to myself. And he would hold my face, and I would hold his face, and he would kiss me, and kiss me. He'd give me things, and I told him about the deck, and after he kissed me many times, I don't remember much else. I do remember the outline of everything and everyone was lighted, as if everything was about to turn into light itself. It was like everything was so brightly backlit that everything was shining. And then he taught us to conduct. That was the day he taught us to put our tongue on the roof of the mouth and keep this circuit up. And that was the great bird that flies to the heart. It was heaven. God in person, kissing, gifting, hugging, loving, endlessly, given over to us for hours and hours and hours. That day must have been 14 hours of it. 14 hours in a small room, giving and kissing, and being instructed in sublimities, in showers of unending love. Showers, just baptisms you could hardly, your visual field would hardly stay in shape because the love was so intense. So the next day, when Master wants to see your deck now, I'm thinking, ego, Frank. Oh, goody, we're going to go have another really good time. And I just told him the Leela the day before of how he finally taught me what he meant by calling me a thief over and over. And there I was doing the very thievery thing. Oh, I'm going to get something. For nothing, the thief says. And but he brought Nam Leela this time. It's like, why is he bringing his daughter, little 3-year-old Nam Leela, to a precipice? Okay. And I threw out a blanket for them in the middle of this deck. This deck was small. It was 2.5 meters by 3 meters. It was small. And I put it right in the middle, and I sat beside him on the high side, him and Nam Leela. And Nam Leela is scared. She's like, and she's crawling all over her papa, just, daddy. And I had played with her before in the yard and taught her some acrobatics, this and that, or just walking on one foot, walking on balanced beams. And so I had a small rapport with her, and I said, Nam Leela, do what I do, is what I was thinking. I said, you can lay down on the deck and just stick your head off, and you can see how high we are, and, see how safe you are, too, at the same time. That way you can relax into being here, which is what my strategy has always been. Calculated, confrontation with your fears. Confront your fears, right? Get over them. Be bigger than your fears, right? That's what we hear from television to a half a dozen stories every other day. Confront those fears and take them on and get over it. So I had taken it to heart, and I was laying down, showing Leela how you could get used to this spot. And she was like having none of it. She was just crawling, no, daddy, papa. I don't remember what she called him, but she was just 3-year-old scared. And I said, no. I tried again. Leela, it's okay. See, I'm right here, and I can look over here. My whole body, except for this part, is safe. And then Beloved stepped in, and he says, Leela, and he looked at her straight out. He says, can you be happy in this place? The shock of it was, I thought of the other time in my life that was that shocking. And that was when I stepped out onto a giant limb, 5 stories high, and it broke, and I fell head first. I fell head first 5 stories. And that was the first thing I thought of, because it was that shocking. Like, holy moly. Because when I fell 5 stories head first, and when you confront death like that, you really do see your whole life pass before your eyes. It's not like super fast motion. It's more like that Shiva, intimate consciousness. You see your life. When you're faced with the end of it, you have a vision of what your whole life is about. And I went off that thing. I went, oh my God, I see my whole life as I was falling through the sky, head first toward the ground. And that's what I thought of when he said, Leela, can you be happy in this place? Because my whole life was a lie. My whole life was about being bigger than myself, being bigger than my fears, being bigger than the challenges. And that's not the teaching of truth at all. And I sat there going, Literally, I thought of flying headfirst toward the ground, because that was the level of shock it was. My whole life, which I've been a very successful extreme sports person, done all kinds of crazy, stupid things, because I didn't know how to feel until I was in his company. And there it was. And she was still wiggling. And so he repeated it, Leela, can you be happy in this place? And there it was, the teaching at a 3-year-old level. Can you be happy in this place? And it was just one of those perfect inquiries. Can you be happy in this place? I sat there in shock. I had fully expected to have this glorious, loving kisses, spiritual. The ego I'd put on already was also just, I was crushed. And I sat there, I must have looked foolish. I was just like, that was my mood. I don't think I moved for 20 minutes. We sat there for 20 more minutes. And I'm like, the whole time. I'm like, I didn't try not to have my mouth open, but I'm like, what? God, I am utterly interrupted. And I sat there because the gravitas of my lifelong error of being bigger than myself was shoved in my face by the instruction for a 3-year-old. Can you be happy in this place? And indeed, Leela heard the instruction, supposed to, and took breath and relaxed. And Beloved made sure he looked at her eye to eye. Can you be happy in this place? It's a deathly place we were at. Can you be happy in this deathly place? That was one of the greatest things. That's a great inquiry I carry with me also. Not only pick up every stick in remembrance of him, but when things get weird or you get yourself in a situation where you go, oh shoot, this is what I wanted, and that is not what I made me. Why did I think this up? And then you go, oh, can you be happy in this place? And then everything changes. As he says in the listening, you're never in the dilemma you conceive yourself to be. If you're troubled by what arises, you're not in proper relationship to it. Again, this creative use of life frustration. Oh, thank you, beloved, for these. Thank you so much. I was in charge of going to buy adult beverages for our gatherings, since beloved said if we didn't smoke and drink around him, we were boring. Plus, it's walking into beloved's house is both utterly joyous, and it's the image that I had most in my mind was harikiri. Your guts are spilled. But it's visceral. It's like your guts. Your guts just got spilled by walking over the threshold of his domain. It reminds me of because you're utterly naked. You're completely naked. He sees right through our every act. And one of the fun things about being with him is he acts out everybody. It makes fun of, so you can see your own little act. What was I going with that? Oh yes, so we would, the trepidation of having your guts spilled by that nakedness is difficult, and an occasional sip is helpful. So I was in charge of going to buy. Well, after a couple of months of this, he would gather with us 4 times a week, say, sometimes more, sometimes almost rarely less, often more. 4 or 5 times a week for 8 to 16 hours a day in a room about this size, small. It was a breakfast room, and I went down to. We were running out of money. We were fundraising so we could keep our dance with him going. And it's like, oh God, why do we have enough money to buy everything we're supposed to buy tonight? And everybody pull out their coins, and I get down to the store, a little store down there in Walua, and I buy all this stuff, and then they go ching, and they said that'll be $36.43, and I went, oh, what? Okay, here's 30. That's not near what I thought. And I thought, well, that's lucky. Maybe they missed something. I don't know. Thank God we needed that so badly, and so I think it's an act of God, right? And I get back in the van and I look at the bill and I see they charged me for 6 packs, not 6 cases, and so I went, oh. Go back up there, and I walk into the gathering, and I'm like, guess what? Some people are pathetic, and that is me. Guess what? Good news. How lucky are we? Beloved heard the story. Went, get back in the walk out of here right now. Walk right back down there, show them their mistake, and give them the money. And I went, oh, that's right. And I go down there and walked in. I said, hey, you guys made a mistake. Look, you charged me for 6 packs instead of 6 cases. And he looked at that, looked at me, and he goes, wow, some people have character, don't they? Some people have really got moral fortitude, And he went on into this tirade about nowadays you can't trust anybody, and most people just go off with it thinking, my lucky day, but you. He just sat there and roasted me and praised beloved over and over. He went on and on about nowadays in the news, nobody would do this, but you did. And I know. I learned a lot in that moment about giving it to him. Because every one of his praises was not to me, but to beloved. Every single thing he said. I was the guy. Can you believe it today? Some people would just love, yeah, I can believe that. But some people have moral fortitude like you. Like, yes! Oh. And ever since then, if an ATM gave me $20 too much, I would walk into the bank and say, hey, your ATM gave me too much. It's the best, be impeccably honest. Be perfectly honest, no matter what it cost. And those kind of things. It's just, I was at a hardware store recently, and they go, oh no, you charged me wrong. And they're like, oh yeah, thank you. They look at you, and it's a great gift to be moral and honest, and it is Him given. Let me tell you, at least in my case.
Forced into it.
I was forced into it. Yes, crying and screaming as usual. The next Leela that I wanted to tell that I hope has universal applicability. His glory and my stupidity combine really well. It was January 29th, 1983, and that night I was on a hot seat. By my own doing, of course. He was letting me know what a character I was, in no uncertain terms. This wasn't, most of the time it's funny. When you can laugh along, that's good. He wants it that way. But when you don't get it, he lets you know, he burns everything that stands between you and the heart itself. And I was fried to a crystalline black. I was more than I could process. He doesn't care. He doesn't give you little bits to chew on until you got that, give you a little more. He gives you all of it, full tilt, all the time. There's no parsing. He's full giving. And it was more than I could handle at the moment. And then it unpacks for years or decades or lifetimes, but the gift is given. And I was, in the moment, still in shock, and I had my ass handed to me and sliced and diced and sautéed, and I was hurting, and I went over. He had invited the men to come over for a Super Bowl, and that was when the local community was trying to get the TV cameras back up, and from the hurricane on November 23rd. They were trying to, every tower in that northern Hawaii was right to the ground, and so they were trying to get the towers back up in time for the Super Bowl. It was a faux or a false goal, but it was a good, let's try to have it up so everybody can watch the Super Bowl kind of a thing. And indeed, they did get the towers up and working that morning. And Beloved invited all the men over for a Super Bowl party. And I go over to his house. I come in the back door, kitchen door. And they said, "Oh, Frank, great, come on in. Beloved's waiting for you. Go on in." And I looked around, and there was nobody else there. And I went, "Oh, is the other guy's not here yet?" "Oh, I'll just wait for everybody. I don't want to bother him." "Oh, no, go on in." And then I realized I was actually scared because I had been so burned the night before, and I had not processed it to the point of consciousness at all. And I was still trembling. And I couldn't think, if I went in there and, I said to myself, should get a clue right there, but I said to myself, even if he says one thing, I'm going to collapse. And then I said, "Oh, no," I said again, "Oh, no, I'll just wait for the other guy." And then, "Oh, no, go on." It was like dun, 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 and face the music, so, okay. And so I remember going through his house and up the stairs, little two stairs, just before his bedroom, which is tiny. His bedroom his queen-size bed took up almost all of the room. And then there was a sliding rice paper door, and then there was a hallway, and the TV was in the wall on the other side of the hallway. His bedroom wasn't big enough to have a TV, so he opened up 2 doors, and and the men went into his room. I was the first, but I remember coming up the stairs and getting ready to turn the corner into his room, scared as scared could be. I was on the verge of tears. And I came around the corner, and he was right there, sitting on the ground. And when I came, he heard me coming. He looked up, and in his eyes, he said, he was silent, but our eyes met, and I heard him say, "Yesterday is no more. There's only this moment. I love you. Want to play?" And that also has been a pattern, an imprint of the avatar that I've lived with. When I get full of myself or in repentance of my stupidities, and then there's the next moment of relationship, and I remember that yesterday is no more. There's only this moment. I love you. Want to play? And that is the truth. That is the truth. There's only this moment for response. And he is in love. Love is given first with an invitation. And that is the right resort to self-understanding, self-knowledge. And so I hope everybody can use these Leelas, particular ones, that I think could be. I was a coin for a few months. So that's the first part of my storytelling, I think. Yes, that's the first part. See if anybody has any questions.
I don't think so. Does any of you have any questions for Frank? You Facebook people.
Anybody here? Any questions?
I would like to say something in addition to your stick story, because I heard that story already on
Yes.
YouTube or whatever, or a couple of times. And actually, when something like that happens to me, I remember the story.
You remember the story?
I remember your story, and I just actually picked it up.
Yes.
Well, because it really made an impression on me.
Well, good. That's what
it
I
really
hope.
did. Yeah.
Oh, good.
So.
Well, what do you call it? Has coinage.
Yeah.
We have a question from Sasha.
Uh-huh.
If it is possible to put the microphone a little closer.
Sure, you can do that.
Or up the sound somehow.
Up the sounds. Frank, talk louder.
Talk louder.
That's never been said. Can you bring me closer to that machine? Or what
I could put the machine closer to you.
Yeah, do, because I'll tend to be soft when I talk about it, because I want to talk about him. And there you go. All right. Now, you get too close to the ugliness will break your machine. So
Sasha, can you let us know if this is...
This helps.
If this helps?
Can you tilt it?
Like
so
this?
The top of my head is not too cut off. There you go. Okay, and I'll try to talk louder also. Thanks, Sasha. Josh, everyone there.
We have a great... Okay.
There's another phenomena, just two short stories, and I call it divine radar. Being around beloved is a miracle, all the time. Every few minutes, when there's an interchange, there's some kind of synchronicity or sensitivity that is extraordinary, or that he shows himself in extraordinary ways. I remember one time Jim Steinberg had sent Beloved 3 books, and he sent a message. Beloved got a message, and we were in the gathering. He says, Jim Steinberg has sent you 3 books. And Beloved closed his eyes, and he goes, yes, one is on the 5th stage to 6th stage transition, and he says one's a brown book with a textured cover, and on the inside, and he described these books in detail, having just said, you're being sent these 3 books. He says, the Dharma will be so-and-so, the shortcoming will be this. He described them all. And we just went, okay. And then we forgot about it. 4 days later, 5 days later, we were in a gathering. This box comes in, they open it up, and he reaches in, and he pulls the books out. As he pulls them out, they were as he described. And then he just takes it, opens up one back, and he starts reading. It was exactly what he had said he would find. That's maybe extraordinary, but that kind of thing is constant. It's constant around him. It's that loud, but maybe more nuanced, but it's like that around him all the time. His sensitivity to the inquiry of devotees, to our heart prayers, is obvious. And if you call, he comes. Call, heart call. He responds to every heart call. I remember one time, it was in 1981, we were at a gathering at the Mountain of Attention at the Landbridge Pavilion. You might have been there. And it started about 3:30, and it was now 9:30. We had sat with him through dinner. And suddenly he goes, what time is it anyway? It was a summer evening, and suddenly got late, but by this time it was late. And he goes, what time is it anyway? And somebody said 9:30. He says, aren't you guys hungry? And then we knew that if he said yes, everybody said yes, then he would go, oh, then let's go eat, right? But if you knew you said, no, I'm not hungry, you'd be lying. You know? So what do you say? And so there's 350 people there, I would say. And people started shouting, oh, no, oh, yes, oh, yeah, we're hungry, oh, yeah. Everybody's like calling out, trying to convince him to stay, basically. And he turned to get some drink off of a nearby table, and I was about 2/3 of the way back, and he was not turned to me, and I knew I couldn't yell loud enough. I could, but I didn't want to yell out enough to make my opinion known, and so I just whispered it to myself, you're the feast. You know, I didn't eat dinner. I was feasting on him, right? This is the feast. And I just said, I just whispered, you're the feast. Amidst 350 other people, most of them go, oh no, it's okay, you know. And he was giving that, and so when I said that, he went, that's right. And he whispered back to me, and it was as if the room were silent. He just went, I said, you're the feast. That's right. His sensitivity is absolute. It's magnificent. He hears heart calls. Another time, I was in the mid-'80s. I was at the Donda in San Rafael, and I don't know how I got to be in such a bad mood, but I was just grumpy, and I was out of it relative to the practice. I couldn't connect with them. I was just pissed off and had to go to Guru Vara. And I'm sitting there in Guru Vara going, yeah. Yes, I know. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder. Frank, you want to do a service project? Oh shit, I think. Now, I'm being put upon, right? I'm being put upon the whole damn time. Every time I turn around, can you do this? Can you do that? I didn't know what I wanted, but I just knew I was grumpy as hell. And at that moment, I recognized I'm just being a grump. And I went, yeah, sure, I'll be glad to. And they went, okay, great. And we go outside. I go outside, and they say, Beloved's going to the De Young Museum in San Francisco. His traveling party needs this box, little box. Can you get there in 45 minutes. Oh yeah, no problem. Okay. Jumped in the car. Oh boy, and I had been sitting there. Oh, I'd been back up, sorry. Storyteller. I've been sitting there going, what I really need is to see him. Because when you see him move, when anything, just the vision of his form is transmissive, and you somehow your dilemma of doesn't make much sense. Just the sheer sighting of him. And so I was sitting there going, I just need to see Beloved. I just need to see him. Maybe they'll show a good video. Here, Guruvara, there's just a bunch of blah, blah, blah. Hey, can you do some service? Oh, God, sure. Take these things. Oh, he's hurt here. Oh, good. I'll get to see him. And I race down to the Young Museum and find a parking spot. And I run over, and it's Tom Klosser, who I served with the mountain at Tumamama. And so we were buddies enough to go, hey, is there someplace I can hide and just see him? And then Tom said, nobody's supposed to see him. No, I said, where's he coming? What's going to happen? He said, well, he's going to come right here and go into those doors. I said, can't I just go up to those bushes and hide? He goes, I didn't say that. In other words, go ahead, Frank. And so I go way up there, hide in the bush, literally get in the bushes. I'm a crazy person, a homeless person in the bushes in Golden Gate Park. And sure enough, about half an hour later, he comes up. But he comes up to the spot where I was near. He come up farther away. And when they stop, a cadre of men surround the whole scene, and Beloved steps into them. I see him, but I can't see him. The security detail's doing too hard, and I'm going, my heart falls, and I go, I'm 100 meters away. I'm a long way, and I just go, Beloved, I need to see you for just a second. And just as I said that, I see two hands going through the group of men, going through the group of hands and pushing them aside, and Beloved steps out and goes, and then goes back in. That's how. That was pretty great. I still can see him. He as he says, I'm the answer to human prayers, not superhuman intent. Still. I left him somewhere, didn't I? We're down there. Thanks.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I wanted to, one of my favorite Leela categories is Leelas that other people have told that touched me somehow. All these, as you see, these Leelas are touching to me and very pointed to me. But sometimes other people tell Leelas that I also think is worth repeating. So I have a few. Some are small. Most are small. My first one is, it's irreverent. But it's not just irreverent about him, it's him being irreverent about him. And it's my son's favorite Leela, of course, when he was young. It's his favorite Leela. Beloved doesn't take himself seriously. He's not like this really serious person, and we're not all like not serious enough. He's free. He's absolutely free. He used to love, back in the days he was Da Free John, he used to love to say, free is my middle name. Mm-hmm. And so he's all the roles, all the expectations, all what you would think are undone by him constantly. My first favorite one was of his own irreverence, and others. Is once upon a time my friend Ron Mead was praising him, saying, "Oh, beloved, you're just the greatest, person, divine master of all the worlds," and it was a bit much. and as he was trying to, beloved just turned around and went, "Stop! You try to kiss my ass, I'll shit in your face." He was at war with the tendency to make him a cult. He was at war with that. And I always thought that was the perfect critique of cultism. You try to kiss my ass, I'll shit in your face. David Patton told me that one time he and Beloved and one other person, maybe Andrew Johnson, was on the Mountain of Attention, and they were celebrating, and Beloved used to go outside, and they stagger outside. They're all 4 men are going to go out and take a whiz off the porch there, and Beloved turns to Andrew and he says, "Andrew, who do you think I am?" And Andrew says, "Well, you're the Lord of all the worlds. You're the incarnation of love." And Beloved says, "That's right. So why are you peeing on my foot?" he was that kind of, he's the humor, free humor, always. Oh yes, another very short one. I heard this from that at the time they were called serving ladies, the Quandra Sukamai circle of people around him. One of them had been, Beloved came in and something wasn't how he had requested it, and he turned to this person and said, "Why did you do that?" And da-da-da-da-da, and you know you're doing this, and these, and just went on into a lengthy criticism about what he had seen, been presented with, and the devotee, "Yes, Beloved, I'm sorry, and my attention to you will be greatened by this, thank you." And Beloved left the room, and the other person said, "That wasn't even your mess up. That was so-and-so's. Why did you go, that was this person's, you didn't do that at all." And that devotee said, "I've never met a criticism that had no truth." And I think of that when I hear criticisms, even if they have almost no truth, which is almost never the case. But always try. The mood is rather, instead of trying to defend yourself, try to find, even if it's not, in this case, it was entirely wrong, the facts, but the truth, can you find a shred of truth when you hear critique? Beloved had said that everybody, it's especially seen in children, how we feel like we don't know enough, and we're afraid to be wrong, and that's why the teaching on divine ignorance is so useful. It's not about knowledge, and that need to, I don't know enough, needs to be directly seen, and the whole mood and efforts to defend yourself is really unseen. It's just not, it's unconscious, and it was shown so explicitly by this great devotee. Said, "I never met a criticism that had no truth." So that was always been useful for me in the world of criticisms, is try to find, even if it's wrong, even if it's not about you, can you find something in there to participate with? That's another Leela that's had point for me. This might not have any great lessons, but I just thought it was amazing. My friend Steve Lido, who came to Beloved at Melrose Place in Los Angeles in the early 70s. When Beloved was, writing, he was editing the transcripts of the first talks, which became the method of the Siddhas, Now My Bright Word. And so they had the talks, someone transcribed them, and then there's a different form in the spoken word and the written word. And it's often very useful to take the spoken word and contour it a little bit for reading purposes. And he was the editor. And so he had a stack of transcripts, and he was just going over every one, editing how it would be, so it could be published as the method of the Siddhas. And he said to everybody, "I'll be sitting in the back room," which is Steve described as his desk, him behind the desk, and a little spot less than a meter between you and the beginning of his desk. It was a small room in the back of Melrose. And Beloved said, "Anybody has a question or want to ask me anything, I'll be here all afternoon. So Steve said he had a question. He wanted to frame it perfectly, so that not ambiguous, because he'd been to all the talks and he knew what he had said, but he still wanted something to clarify. How did that? Where does the contraction come from? No, that's been said. He was sitting there. So he said he went in, and Beloved was sitting there editing away. Looks up and sees Steve. And motions to sit in the chair. Looks up at him. Steve's sitting there going. And Beloved takes a look. Just starts editing. Occasionally look up. Meantime, Steve's going. For 3 hours. Trying to frame the question, so it wouldn't be just a repeat and a fresh, real question. But no, the teaching already says it. He says he sat there and just sat there, and Beloved occasionally look up at him and just go back to editing. He said he sat there, and how it is when you're close to Beloved, the force, your mind starts going even faster than ever, because it's not a matter of, he says, of quieting your thoughts. It's satsang blasts the hell out of those thoughts, and so that force churns the interferences first before it blasts them out, sometimes, and often, and so for 3 hours he sat there. And as we all who have had long occasions with him know, at first the mind is going really fast, and then it finally calms. And then for Steve sitting there, he said finally after 3 hours, the internal chatter just dies slowly down until it's perfectly quiet and he has no questions. He says it's at the moment that his internal dialogue becomes silent, Beloved looks up and says, anything else? No, thank you. I don't know if there's a good point to that. I just think it's marvelous to look at him, to know how he, there would be times, of course, in everybody, I hope, has experienced this in meditation, where is as if the top of your head comes off, and you can, if you're other people in the room, you can read their thoughts or feel their thoughts. And everybody does this all the time somehow anyway. But in his company, it's loud. And so he says, I live your thought, I breathe your breath, I suck down your thought, I think your thoughts, I suck down your food, I live out your life, I am your person altogether and absolutely. I know this because I am you. And that little Leela is, to me, he's not just psychic. It's that he is all in all. And one of the great moments in the history of Adidam, for me, is right after the Vedanta temple. He said when he sat down to meditate after that, there was nothing more for him, so to speak, to meditate on. And he said he saw the expanded sphere of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and he could meditate each one of them. He became everyone. And so he, as he says, I am the wave of light within your mind that happens to be everything, my love. Who exists as me. Now, and Mario's favorite, Leela, Pirate Island.
Oh!
Pirate Island, I learned, there's a point to this. This is not just fun, although this is the funnest thing I've ever heard in my whole life. But that's a side note. It was in Mexico in the early 70s. Beloved was on vacation or whatever with taking a break from the ashram so they could assimilate, or whatever his service was. He were in Mexico with Paris and I think Nina and Pat. It was a lovely Mexican evening, and they were in nice evening clothes walking down the beach. ladies, I imagine, in chiffon, or maybe I was told, beautiful flowing dresses, summer, tropical. And beloved sees a light out on the horizon. Paris, what's that light? Go find out what that light is. Paris runs off, comes back, says, Pirate Island. Pirate Island. He says, go find out what it is. Paris runs back off, comes back, says, find somebody to take us out there. He's gone a long time. He comes back and says, what took you so long? I can't find anybody that will go out there, beloved. They'll kill us. They'll take your boat. Nobody will drive out there and wait for us, and then while we check it out, because they figure their boat's going to be confiscated, they'll be killed. Beloved thought about it. Said, see if you can find somebody who just drop us off at the dock. And sure enough, they found somebody who just let them off the dock and sped off. And there was the cabana, and they stride into with all grandeur. And it was described to me, it's a scene out of a movie, gun-belted, half-toothed, big big mustache, cigar-smoking drunks, bleary-eyed by a bar, scene, and here comes beloved in Paris, and two women, beautiful women, and young women in chiffon dresses, strolling in. And they're all like, and beloved walks in and goes, Jesus, fuck, this place stinks. Now, he's genius, and he's a genius at insults as much as anything. Yeah. And they're all like going, what the F, in whatever that is in Spanish, and they're just looking at each other like, what the hell just happened? And then of course they sit down at a table, and beloved starts going, Jesus, the service in this place sucks. Okay, note 1, service sucks. I don't know what all he said, but I heard that it was just a hurl of insults one after another. And they're all like, they're talking to each other, what the fuck, and they come over and they come over, and beloved goes, oh, yes, the stink was worse before. God, it was not as bad before. Your mother should have aborted in Mexico. Oh my God. And the guys are going, what? They put 4 beers on the table, and they go off, and they're, and they just, and they gun belts, literally giant daggers in the belt, in the ready to be draw, march over, and as they start getting closer, beloved's insults rate. Oh, a wall of stink. Oh, Jesus. Just starts hurling insults as they get closer and closer, and they're like, who the fuck is this guy? And they get right up to him, and Paris says he can see it all. He says they're going to kill beloved right away, right? They'll kill him because he's got a beer bottle under the table, is getting ready to break it and defend beloved to his death, which will be soon. The women will be raped, they'll all be thrown in the sea, right? This is going to happen in 20 minutes, it'll all be over. And in 2 minutes it will all be over for Paris and beloved. And as they get closer and closer and closer, beloved insults to the very last second. And this guy reaches into his gun belt and pulls out this giant knife to cut his head off. Literally pulling out the knife to cut his head off. And beloved throws his neck back and laughs. Ha 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 ha! And they're like, and beloved says, I was wondering how I was going to get you to come over here and drink with me. I need real men to drink with. First drinks on me, everyone. And they're going, this guy has balls this big. And they party all night, and they take him back in the morning and drop him off with a thanks for the night of ecstatic celebration. Now, when I heard that, it touched me so profoundly, because I thought of him. I could tell he was enlightened. Look at his teaching. brilliant, most brilliant thing ever, literally ever. His loving company is sweetest joy. But I always thought of that as like, spiritual, right? No. This guy, balls this big is a gross understatement. Battleships, giant stars are the size of his balls. This guy, what does it take? Imagine what it would take to walk into a place that people are about to kill you and insult them to the last second and throw your neck out, and then be able to turn that around with a laugh.
Good.
True story.
Amazing.
Amazing. How we doing? How we doing on sound questions?
Yeah, let me check. Anything?
Were you there when the accident with Tom Closer happened? No, you weren't. Do you know the story?
No, sure.
Would you like to tell?
No, I don't know it that well. Anybody have any help for me or inquiries for me? How could such a fool be so lucky?
Alexander says, just a big smile on my face. Closer to Frank. Simon says, makes me cry, such sweet love.
Yes, yes. Such a miracle.
And I have a question from Surjayi Fishivashanti. Can you tell the Francis Popkin Leela?
I'll be glad to. It was 1981, the spring, and I lived in a household which was, perhaps the central household or the oldest devotees in Santa Rosa, California. That's where the community meetings would happen often at our house, and middle afternoon, I hear a knock on the door, and it was out of a storybook. 6'1", broad at the shoulders, narrow at the hips. He should have had a chewing gum. A hay straw. Should have been chewing that. Blue jeans, cowboy, not hat or not, but a cowboy, real cowboy. Don't wear cowboy hats and necessarily the funny boots and. But here he was. I looked up. Could I help you? 18 years old. And he goes, I'm Francis Popkin. And the people at the seminary said that I should come here. And I thought, come to the seminary, that means you've heard about Arida, beloved. And they were sending him to our house. And I said, oh, come on in. So I invited Francis in. And I'm trying to, this guy's a simple, he's not just he's from Holyoke, Colorado. And if you look at it on the map, you can hardly find it. It's when they draw the circles on the map, the ones they draw that are clear. When you blink, if you drive through it, you don't see it. That's Holyoke. It's in northeast, extreme northeast Colorado, out in the plains. And he said, I said, tell me your story, Francis. How did you come to hear about beloved Arida? He goes, well, when I graduated from high school last year, I had mental pain. And I went to my priest and I said, Father, I've got mental pain. What can you do for me? Is there anything in the scriptures for mental pain? Because I have mental pain. And they couldn't help me. He looked in the Bible and they just couldn't find anything on mental pain that I was having. So I thought, I looked at phone books for Denver, and I looked at all the bookstores, and I found a spiritual bookstore, and I called them, and I said, "What's the latest thing you got on truth?" And they said, "You'll just have to come pick out one of those yourself." So I took a bus down to Denver, and I went in that big store, and I looked at every book on their bookshelf. And I pulled out this one, The Enlightenment of the Whole Body. Was one of my favorite books. And he got very sophisticated, and I go, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, and I'm trying to get a read on this guy. I'm trying to go, "Is there anything that you read or something?" And I thought maybe he would respond to something sweet, beautiful that's in there as well. "No, I just read it." And I said, what I did is I went home and I just let my fingers go across all the words. And while I was doing it, my mental pain would go away.
Oh.
And so I just kept doing it. And I read the whole thing. And then I thought, what if I understood it? And just reading the words was all he was doing. And he said, "What if I understood it?" So I got me a dictionary and I put it there and I looked up every word I didn't know. And I read it again. And I'm like going, I'm the only person I know that's written Enlightenment of the Body twice, other than me and Bill Stranger, or 3 times, which Francis says. And then I did, and then I did it again. And every time I'd be reading, my mental pain would be gone. And I'm going, okay, is there anything that touched you? Is there anything? I'm trying to get to just be expressive of the teaching so I can kind of figure how to help him or what else I can do for him or anything. And I said, "Is there anything?" I keep pressing. He goes, "Well, there is this one place." And he opens the book up. And he goes, "Truth is in the moment. This instant in which there is no meaning, no cause, no motive to any effect. The radiance of ignorance is the reality. And all phenomena only test our sufficiency and realization of fact. It's neither subjective or objective relative to this moment. It is only, and it is unspeakable." And I went, "Oh, yeah, that one." And I was like, I had not noticed that one before. And I noticed it after that. And I was like, "Okay, Francis." And he goes, "Well, could I help you with anything? What can I do for you?" "Well, I want you to answer me a question." "Okay." Got very serious. Is he who he says he is?" I said, "Yes, most certainly he is. Indeed, he is the one he says he is." Mm-hmm. And his face goes almost ashen white. And he goes, "Have you told the Catholic Church yet?" And he says, and I said, "Yeah, they're not interested again." And he goes, I said, "You should write him a thank you letter." I could write him a letter? He would get a letter from me? I said, "Yeah, get a card. Bring it by the office to me." "Oh, I will." Comes in the next day with a Hallmark card. None of these art, beautiful, elegant, New Age cards or even something made. It was a Hallmark card with a bull charging on the front. And you know how cards can exceed the limits of their little square, had little puffs where the snort was coming out of the bull extra, snorting, rushing bull. And you open it up and it says, "I get a charge out of you." And I went, "I'll send it to him." And it was, unfortunately, it was one of those periods where Beloved was withdrawing from the community to let us take responsibilities in ways that we had been irresponsible, and I most definitely, and so he was around for a few months, but he never got to see Beloved. It was a terrible thing, and I would always carry him because he was so dear and so sweet and so sincere. And then I was there with Beloved one night, and I told Andrew Johnson about this story. He just cracked up laughing because he's from the South too, country and comedian, and he goes, where he's laughing, he says, that night, he goes, Beloved, you got to hear the story of Francis Popkin. So I told Beloved all these stories that I just told. And the naive innocence, laughable. You think when you go, I get a charge at you, we're all like, ha 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 ha. Beloved never laughed once. It was obvious that that laughter was our egoity. Ha 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 ha, can you believe that guy said, I'm sophisticated? You know, and Beloved would just received it, and I just, for 40 minutes or so, I told him Francis Popkin stories, and he went into Papa. He was just, and no one laughed. Then laughable in some kind of social context, but not in a sacred context. And I always was like struck by even now I knew the punchline of the story, and I was still laughing, you know. And then Beloved said, you see, Francis proves you don't need to have a PhD. You don't need to be sophisticated to understand this teaching. You just need to need it. And we all went, oh yeah, this is not a laughing matter. That's the Francis Popkin story in a nutshell. Thanks. I always love to remember Francis.
And did he disappear after
Yeah,
that?
yes. And I've tried to find him in this internet age to no avail.
Oh.
So if anybody out there finds Francis Popkin, I'd appreciate it. Beloved was so sweet. His beauty foot was, well, it would, when you were aligned and you could be with him in it, it would take you to divinity. I've told this story before, and so suffer me again, but I had gone to, in January of 1983, I had gone to Honolulu to help just deliver something for a court appearance of some legal matters we were handling. And at the time, Kauai did not have a lighted airfield, so there was only daylight flights. So I had to spend the night there. And I spent the night with an ex of a friend, and had too fun. I was irresponsible in my jollity with her, but nevertheless, I was sleeping on the floor, kind of ashamed that I'd been so hardy har, and I was disturbed by constant nightmares. And throughout the night, nightmares were plaguing me, and monster, whatever it was, after me. And I was practically in a sweat for hours. And then just after 3 o'clock in the morning, the monster finally got me. And I woke up and went, Master. And I looked around, where am I? Oh yeah, you remember where I was? On the other side of the room was an alarm clock on the floor, and I saw it said 3:04. And I did a quick calculation saying, okay, in an hour and a half, it'll start the daybreak. The first flights will be about 6. I'll need to get up. I can go one more round of sleep, and I'll get up and I'll catch the first jet back. I just did that calculation really quickly, and fell right back asleep. And really right away went into the dream state. And in the dream state, Beloved comes to me and says, yes. And he says, put your head on my knee. And he put his hand on my head, and I have had the unfathomable grace of doing this in waking state, putting my head on his knee, and him putting his hand on the top of my head. And the most visceral description of that I can imagine is standing under a pretty moderate waterfall. he has his head out of it. And as the flow of his force, joyous force, is rushing through my body, I kind of visualize the outer shell of my capsule of energy, as it seems, and I could see these streams of joy just going through the body shell. And then I noticed at the edges, it was the flow was disturbed, just a little backwater, so to speak. And so attention being what it is, I was drawn to see what's the disturbance here. And I go inside, and I see this backwater, and I see that it's my own action. It's me. It's my constriction. That's disturbing his flow. And I go, oh, teaching is true again. And I went, yes, thank you. And I quit doing this, and I was washed in his joy. There it's back. He holds my face over and over and over and kisses me and kisses me and kisses me and kisses me. Over and over and over and over again. And to me, it's like a sloppy 16-year-old's first kisses. How you know how you are when you first start kissing, you just like, it was just this full giving up, innocent kissing and holding my face and kissing me over and over and over and over. And then he pulls my head aside. And he says, I say, thank you. And he says to me, something I think about a lot. He says, but I want you to use me for a lot more than getting out of trouble. In other words, the good luck God, the pray for your problems God, that's not who. Yes, he says, I might improve your life, but that's a secondary aspect of what he wants us to do is to feel, see his imprint. He is the daylight man. He is the one who comes into the cave of our subjectivity from the daylight. He is the one that is utterly, utterly free, enlightened, always loving. He wants us to be imprinted with this and breathe this for real, as deeply as adapt to as much as we can. And, what is it? We are in this terrible place between life and death. And if we can remember that, we will breathe him. And just remember him, breathe him. It really is that simple. Adapt the body to him. Put things in order. Put our lives in order so that we can resonate to his holy feet. And there's, of course, two sides to this, in the sense that there's the brutal confrontation with everything that's less than love. And that gets burned up in his embrace. And there is his sweetness, as he says, right above truth is Francis Bacon's favorite quote. Above that is, "Oh friends, do not fail to mind me in and out. I am the sweetness, the taste of unmortal and unimaged grace. I'm beyond incarnation, neither here nor there. I'm only for a moment, not merely to save you all, but all to warn and all to call to this wonder that I am. And everyone is as I am, unless they fail to love me." I remember one night, it was my job after the gatherings to take all the trash bags filled with trash and smells of terrible kinds that they stayed infested. And so at the end of every evening, I would gather all the trash bags in the trash bins, all the bags, and I would carry them, the 300 yards or so out to the guard shack where we could, so it'd be away from his house, so his house wouldn't collect beer smell. And I did this every night. And this one particular night I was there, and I was there was a little outdoor bathroom that I used, and I went there, and I ran into one of the serving ladies in less than her pajamas, and oh, excuse me, you know, I was in their space doing the service, but that had just happened, and so the next night I was kind of, you know, trying to make sure I was really conscious of where everybody was, and not imposing, and I just finished everything, and I had to take a whiz, and so I went into that outdoor bathroom and did my business, and I was coming out, and I was reaching for the door handle, and just as I reached for the door handle, about 10 meters to the left, no, not that far, but almost, to the left is the kitchen door, and I heard someone grab that handle, and that was where I'd run into somebody. So instead of grabbing the doorknob, I just took 3 inches to the left and knocked off the light switch. And then I heard the door, so I could be in there and not come out into the space to disturb anyone. And I heard the door open and close and the blinds clang against the door. And then I imagined in my mind someone walking in their bare feet across the outdoor hallway and going into the back of what had been a carport, but now made into his sleeping quarters. And so I imagined that, and just to be sure, I imagined it again. And I'm like really quiet. I'm like trying to hear somebody, because even bare feet and breathing and walking makes some sound. It was a perfectly quiet evening. No wind. And I'm listening, and I don't hear anything. So I think maybe that person's looking at the beautiful stars, and they're going to go. So I wait another couple breaths, really controlling my breath so it doesn't make any sound, so I can hear perfectly. Okay, there's nobody. So I reach over and I turn the doorknob so slowly so the clankering wouldn't attract any attention, and open it so that the blinds didn't jiggle, so it would make a single sound, so I could silently get away. And I opened the door, and my attempt to go unnoticed was complete failure, because squatting there by the steps going into the bathroom was Beloved, waiting to see who's hiding in the bathroom. And when I opened the door, he jumps up, goes right at my face. Frank! It was like you hadn't seen your best friend in years, and he or she just rushes to your face, saying your name, like, oh, finally I get to see you. Frank. I have thought of that so many depths. Him calling your name with absolute affection, absolute gladness. Frank. It broke my heart. He goes, what are you doing here? And I step down the steps with him. He puts his arm around me. I put my arm around him. And he just walks in, what are you doing here? And I say, well, you know, we walk out and across the drive out into the grass looking at the stars. And I say, well, you know, I do this every night. I take all the garbage away. And I ran into somebody the other night, so I was kind of hiding so I didn't disturb anybody. But I do this every night. I take all the garbage away before everybody goes to bed. He goes, you do that for me? I've relived that moment so many times, because what a perfect time to say you are a facade of Beloved itself in person. You are the living, divine God alive in our time. And I'm so happy to breathe the air anywhere on earth, because you may have breathed an atom of it. That's what I wish, something like that I wish I had said. I managed, yeah. And he just held me. It was so sweet. And we just, in silence, looked at the stars. One more full breath. I was gone. It's He's like that. He is. It's like he's your best friend without all the familiarity, but the tenderness. I always noticed that he was like your dearest intimate to everyone. It's impossible to conceive. This is another just sweetness, Leela. It happened after the hurricane, and everything had been destroyed. There was no the Frog Mound was destroyed. I mean, the doors, walls, screens, everything was blown out. Doors laying everywhere. I mean, it was destroyed. And the only building within a long area that was untouched, not a single crack and a single pane, was his house. And at the end of the evening, as soon as the hurricane passed, we realized our great good fortune, and we just partied our asses off, just in celebration with him, just celebrated with him so to the late, early morning. And just as the night was beginning to break, it was still dark, but you could tell it was breaking. He said, well, I guess there's no place anybody else can sleep, so why don't everybody find a place in my house? And we'll have to meet too. And so I said, I'll take right in front of his chair. I spoke up first because I wanted to sleep with my head right at his chair. And so people went around finding, everybody went to all of his bedding and everybody's bedding that was in the cooler there, in the esoteric order, and found every blanket and every sheet and whatever else we had in the tropics, and ran around to give everybody, make sure everybody had a little something. And you used your something or to make a little pillow. Everybody kind of made do. I got really settled right in front of his chair. But then Beloved came around and tucked us all in. He came around to every single person. It's his house. So he made sure as host that everybody was comfortable. And so he went around to every single person and tucked us in, tucked every single one of us in. And I remember so much when he came to me, of course, because he took the little sheet and kind of tucked it in around like this, like, you know how moms put their 4-year-old or 3-year-olds tuck it into bed. That's what he did. He kind of tucked it around and snuggled it, and then he put his hands on my face and just wiped away everything. Just rubbed his hands on my face until I was in samadhi. And then he goes over to the next person. And I passed out into samadhi, except I like to sleep like this. I'll often go like this. And so I stretched out like this in the sleep. My hand would touch his chair. I'd wake up, what the? Oh yeah. And so, it's okay. You know, it's not going to. Pretty much a little while later, I stretched out my hand. And so I realized I couldn't do that. I could not touch his chair and sleep at the same time. There's no way. The Shakti coming off of his chair was electric. Felt like a real wall electricity. And so I said, well, I'll have to scoot. So I scooted away like 6 inches or 12 centimeters or so to get away so that I could stretch out my thing and not have to be woken up. Let's see what else I wanted to say. I wanted to relate, tucked us in. Yeah. Any other questions we have over there? Am I talking? Am I getting too soft? Should I speak up? See what we got there.
Let's see. Peter says, I'm sorry I have to quit. I greatly enjoyed these wonderful Leelas. Thanks, Frank. It is a joy to listen to you. Surjai, thank you so much, Frank. And mentioned earlier, beloved knew I was hungry. I mean, I don't know what it refers to. Maybe you get it. Oh.
Well, he knows all that kind of stuff.
And Sasha says, the pirate story was for me the equivalent of what the Namlila story was for you. Message from freedom.
Shocking how magnificent he is. It's shocking at times. You can't quite admit, I mean, I've always compared seeing Beloved to, it's out of human scale. You don't. What is it like to be with? And in fact, he talked about a lot about why we've taken on Hinduism features, because he says they're the only people who've developed a culture of what is it like to be around a enlightened person. We didn't know. We tried to party. Well, woohoo, party, he's free. And of course he indulged that and had to suffer that till the lesson was learned, at least once, at least a few times. But he's out of human scale. I've often compared him to the very first time you go to the Grand Canyon. First time I went to the Grand Canyon, I thought, I bet if I'm really good at frisbee throwing, I bet I could throw a frisbee and make it to the other side and get over to there, because I could have calculated well. And I'm like blustering away my ego, and I thought I see a sign there, and it goes, the other side was 17 miles, and I went, what? I was thinking 1,700 feet, maybe. I maybe have had the angle just right. I might make a frisbee throw because I'm really good, And it's 17 miles. It's like that. To be around him is like that. It's not human scale. You can't go always like combination of No, it's not the combination of anything. Terry Patton used to say that he was the combination of the Buddha, Jesus, Genghis Khan, Marlon Brando, and James Joyce and Shakespeare. That doesn't even come close. It's out of human scale. I'm glad I could reflect a glitter of him in any way. Well, I've got one to finish. One day, most people might not know, although I've told this Leela a lot, the very first day that I had my first personal encounter with Beloved straight face to face is that famous time on the rock, when we're all sitting there on the rock. That was September 9th, 1982. And as we sat on the rock and he took us over, after that samadhi had done its work or whatever, we started getting off the rock, and I decided I would show everybody something they thought they would really like. And I had, since I'm a crazy person, this is the largest river. This is the North Fork of the largest river in Hawaii. Now, everybody does know this river who has seen Indiana Jones' first movie, where the big ball is rolling out at him, and then he finally gets out of that danger, and he jumps, and he's suddenly surrounded by natives who all have their spears bows and arrows pointed at him, and he somehow gets out of that, and dives in the water where the seaplane. That water, that is the river. That is the river that borders the sanctuary. It's a large river. It's the largest river in Hawaii. Now we're down in this crevice, this deep canyon at this rock, and this waterfall of this giant river is crashing. First it crashes 11 feet, 3.5 meters, then 10 meters or 32 feet, and then makes a big hectare pool, flows by a giant rock where we're sitting, then drops another 80 feet or 25 meters down to where Indiana Jones dives in. And we're down in this deep canyon. And after we get off the rock, of course, when waterfalls hit pools like that, there's usually a backwash. It usually oftentimes will go one way and make a big pool swirl. And the water is so forceful on one side, you can swim against it if you swim really hard, but on the other side, you can just, the current. And I had noticed that if you go on the backside, backwash, you go right into the waterfall, right where it's just pounding the heck out of you. I discovered that if you reach up through the pounding waterfall, there was a handhold. And if you pull up through the smashing water on one side and pull yourself up, there's a little ledge, just only about this wide, And if you get there, you can kind of get behind, not behind like this, but behind like this, waterfall, and then jump through it. And the river hits you, knocks the shit out of you. I mean, pounds you down, churls you under, and you're going, and you think for a second that you're trapped. You go round and round a couple times in the swirl, and you think for a second, oh shit, I'm dead. But then it spits you out. And I did it several times, so I knew it was okay. And so I swam over there, and I climb up on the waterfall, and I jump through the waterfall, and it smashes me down, and I swim back in the wash and climb up again. Beloved dives right in. I mean, he comes, whoosh, 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 swims over, puts his hand up, and I pull him up onto that ledge with me, and just to make sure he's okay, I put my arms around him. And what was amazing to me was not that I was standing under a giant waterfall pounding, and it was so loud, it was unbelievable, with the Lord of all the worlds in my arms. It was that it was so ordinary. I had him in my arms. He's looking at me. Our faces are just like this, and this is fun. This is fun, but it's just so natural. I'm suddenly so relaxed. What it takes to get me relaxed. I'm so relaxed, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and he screams loud, "Are there any rocks?" I can't hear him. He's this close to me, and he's screaming, and I cannot hear him. It's so loud. And I go, "What?" And he points and says, "Rocks! Are there any rocks? Is it safe?" Screams. And by the hand gestures and the meaning and stuff, I could put the sound pieces together. I go, "Oh, no, it's okay, it's good." And he breaks free of me, and I've often said that I'll remember this as I die. He dives into the water, and at that moment, the sunlight comes up the crevice. Right? And the sun goes right there. The sunlight comes up the crevice. It hits the waterfall. And you know what light is like when it hits rushing water? Just... And he goes, "Whoopee!" And his legs out flying, his arms out flying, and he makes a perfect star shape by his legs out and his arms out, screaming "whoopee" at the top of his lungs into this flashing, pulsing light. Wow. What a God. I thought he was so cool. He did me better than I did me. And he hit that swirling water. It knocked the shit out of him too. It churned him down. And you think you're going to die for about a split second because instead of shooting you right out, it churns you around again. And it finally spits you out. And he looked back at me like, he cracked up. That I got. Anyway, and that was September 9th, and that was the night he called us all over and said, "Have you heard about the dreaded bamboo?" And then that's when he said, "What is the truth? We are happy. What is the truth? We are happy. The Great One is our very being." And he was like that all night, and just. But we keep going on this impossible 3-day thumb and finger. He goes, "The truth is that we are happy. We live in God. The Great One is our very being." And so that began the dreaded Kambu. That will be in that night. And then in January, we were leaving 3 or 4 times, we would have a gathering. And the gatherings would often start about 2 to 4 in the afternoon and go till 2 or 4 in the morning. But this one particular night or day, maybe we were all, everybody, he would always end the gatherings in the same way. "Now get out!" And there was no, "Oh, I'll see you later, man, I love you." There was no sentiment, no room for sentiment. Just, "Now get out." It was very cute. It was very sweet because it was Socratic. It was a paradox. Yeah. And sometimes when we would all be wandering across the lawn, swooning, floating away, he'd come out on the front door and he'd go, "I love you, babies. I love you, my babies. I love you." Scream across the lawn too. But this one day, we were all leaving, and I was the last one to leave, and he grabbed me. And he said, "Frank, you have to learn Sama Darshan." Sama meaning sane. Darshan meaning vision. To see everything in one vision, in one light. See, he says, not, and I went, "Huh?" And he went over and over what Sama Darshan is, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I gotta do Sama Darshan, okay. And but he described what Sama Darshan was, and said that was very important for me to learn. Oh, okay. In 2011, I decided to meditate up in the woods near my house, where he had come nearby, actually, in Marin County. And I was sitting there, in the middle of nowhere, by myself, just thinking of him. And I started thinking about him under the waterfall. And that's what I thought about. I'm sitting here just my meditation is just me and him, and how natural it was holding on to him under the waterfall. And how it's an extraordinary circumstance, really, to get the guru in your arms under a waterfall. And how funny it was that it wasn't extraordinary. It was ordinary to me. Not because I'm so used to that kind of thing, but just because he is, so is. And just I would just sat there in that meditation, just looking at his eyes, and just so happy just to be rested in his arms. And then he turned and went, "Whoopee!" screaming. And at that moment, I went, "Oh, whoopee," obsession with whoopee, underintended, is a perfect description of me. I'm always doing these exciting things, whoopee, and these extremes so that I would feel to depth. So I would always put myself in these extreme, foolish situations in order to come to a depth of feeling. Whoopee. And at that moment, I saw what he had done wasn't just cool. He's so cool. It was he had made fun of me to the nub. That I was obsessed with whoopee. And that is not Samadarshan. That is a thief. That is someone who thinks they can take heaven by storm. That you can go get it, you can be clever enough, you can be exciting enough, you can be passionate enough, you can go whoopee, whoopee.
What is Samadarshan?
Samadarshan is to see everything the same. Not some things are whoopee and so everything else is garbage. So to have that difference in what I would think, whoopee, I've done it, I've made it, whoopee. That's different. Samadarshan is not different. It's the same. It's
Is it then neutral?
No, it's seeing everything darshan, in beauty, seeing everything in God, seeing everything as His form.
Good or bad?
Yes, whatever happens, you drop something, think of Him. Samadarshan. Not try to get the ultimate goodie, not to try to get the ultimate happiness, not to try to get the best job, whatever it is, it's going to be, yeah, we did it. Whoopee, we're having fun. Whatever that difference of whoopee means to me. And I did a professional job of it. That's not the truth. What was important for me, and probably others, is to cultivate Samadarshan, where, yeah, there's a whoopee here and there, but it's all the same, really. If you know, as he says, He still makes circles out of me. My soul is round, round and round, high and low, the chemical high and low, atoms to consciousness, shroud upon the pole, the mask and eye, moving parts around me is me after all. Life is mine, expressing all high and low. The lingam already is in me after all. But the serpent sucks its tail high and low. Whoopee! Oh no, whoopee! Oh no. The serpent sucks its tail high and low. Unless my soul is round, unless I press upon the surface of the lingam consciousness, unless I press upon the lingam with my soul, if I press upon the lingam of consciousness with my soul, my feeling, then everything is the same. Then the soul and serpent, high and low, forever turn on me. And not me, Frank, me, the heart, Him. So in that moment, sitting there in the woods, I went, oh, Samadarshan is the serpent that sucks its tail high and low. It is whoopee. It is not Samadarshan. And the whole error of my life again, of getting the great goodie, taking heaven by storm, going for the whoopee, is the error of my life. It is the error of my life. And I got it perfectly at last, what Samadarshan is. And then there was only holding Him, the ordinariness of looking in Him. That was sufficient. No, it didn't have to be wowie zowie. Yeah, it happened to be wowie zowies under a fucking waterfall with God, but that was immaterial. That just the simple relationship to Him. And I sat there until I held Him until my head as He says, there's nothing above the collar but the sky. And that's when and He had given me that instruction in January of '83, and this was almost 30 years later. And that's how He works. He gives you everything, and it takes decades, lifetimes, in fact, for Him and for everyone, I'm sure, but for you to get the lessons, and He gives you everything. And I finally understood. Not that I'm always a shining example of Samadarshan, you know, dear wife, but nevertheless, the lesson of taking heaven by storm, of thinking you're going for a great experience, that ended that day when I finally got his little private instruction. That's what I got. That's the lessons that I have learned that I've like remembered.
Beautiful.
I'd like to pass on. He was, what grace. What grace. Somebody wrote something. As he said, that such poor bastards as us should suffer such enjoyment.
Sasha says we are enjoying this so much, referring to the Brazilian community.
Mm-hmm.
Simon says, Frank, the moment you heard Beloved died, is there anything you can say about that?
Sure. When he passed out of the body, kind of a thing. Sure. I used to have and have been a long time floater, where you get in isolation chambers. But one of those days, I said 3 or 4 times, I would leave a gathering and I'd be the last one to leave. And Beloved one day grabbed me on the way out, grabbed my arm, pulled me back, goes, Frank. He'd been talking a long time, trying to teach me how to meditate. And he said he was frustrated. He's more frustrated that I couldn't meditate than I was. But he pulled me back in and he goes, Frank, you'll never learn to meditate sitting on the ground. Your body karma is too extreme. It won't work. Find another way that you can learn to meditate. Experiment with a chair. But he didn't leave it there. He said, I don't know. Experiment. Find a way that you can learn to meditate so you don't have to have the body imposing on you anymore. And in 1990, I got into my first float isolation chamber, floating in warm Epsom salts into the dark. And the minute I got in, I went, oh, this is what he meant. Let the body put it aside. And then it's down to it. Where's your attention? As he says, spiritual life is measured in this moment. Where's your attention? And so I finally had this isolation chamber tank where I finally learned to meditate. It's like, oh my God. And so I was in the tank, and I had just posted my first YouTube, or one of my first YouTube videos, before I got in the tank, and the audio was, it doesn't matter whether I live or die once you realize this attachment to me. You know that from I Will Do Everything is the talk. And I had just posted that, and I was floating in my float tank. It was late at night, or late for me, 10 o'clock. And suddenly I've been about an hour, which is, sometimes I get out about after an hour. The whole cycle of really resting has taken its full bodily impact anyway. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, I'm just swooning, just flooded by him. And I'm just like, whoa, oh my God. And I stay in for another hour, just in constant ecstasy, just wave upon wave upon wave of his beauteous intimacy, breaking me, riddling my every fiber. I crawl out of the tank about an hour or so later, just like, whoa, what was that? And I walk into my house. I was next door. I walked into my house, and I thought, I'll never go to sleep. And I got one. So I took a sleeping pill, sleeping aid, which is something I almost never did. And I sleep like a baby. And I'd take it just as I swallowed. The phone rang, and it was Ron saying, "Frank, Beloved's left the body, and we're supposed to all pray that he reassociate." And I said, "No, this is it, Ron. because he wrote that when he dies, when he passes out of the body, he will flood all of his devotees who are thinking about him. And I just got flooded. This is it. And so, and then 3 days later, at the appointed burial time, I went back into the tank, and it's the only time I ever traveled in that kind of psychic, astral way in the tank. And I went to, I stand by it, this is my bullshit and I'm standing by it. I went to his burial, and I was a leaf, a petal, I was a petal at the outer edge of the Sahasrara flower, shouting endless gratitudes. And I so love telling Leelas, because you know that I do remember what his sweetness and power and humor is like. And I can say unequivocally that it is no different anytime now, anytime we turn to him. It is no different. I have had him hold my face and kiss me on the mouth, stroke my brow, hold me, hug me, kill me, kiss me. And it is no different now. None. Zero. In fact, ever since the Richiradama event, he's been more direct, more intimate. How could that be? What miracle upon miracle is it that he is more direct, closer? He was already us. How could he be more closer? And yet he is. Now, that is the truth. It is the truth. It's not some institutional line. No, it's
propaganda.
No, it's really, 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 actually, and thoroughly true.
Wow.
The proximity I've had the proximities like, obviously I am a terrible fool, and I needed that. Otherwise I'd be off in my own adolescent stupidities. He broke me. As he says, give me a chance. Give me a second and I will break your navel. And until we surrender it to him, and I can tell you, now and now and now is no different. If we call him, if we non-mythically, non-cultically call upon him, his power it magnifies. And it's not some trick of language. It's paradox, it's beyond the mind, so explanations don't make it. But it is true, as he says, it's true. If you will practice, you will see that it's self-evidently true. And there is the only separation between us and him is always in the realm of our own responsibility. But if we take responsibility for this, for our avoidance is the only distance. As he says, my voice does not call from far away. Seek me, and I must abandon the body. And that is true. He is only. The reality is beauty, is truth, is love itself. That is the truth. And it is inherently and always already the case. Da. That reminds me of a homily in the Upanishads.
And you've experienced both, Frank.
Yes,
I really
experienced both, and it's really true.
You say full-heartedly that it's still the same.
It is the same. This is the same. It is. It really is.
It's so amazing to hear that.
Partly I wish I were grown up then, so that I could tell him face to face in that moment. But as he points out, we create our own past as well as our own future in that sense. And so that moment when he had his arm around me and he says, "You do this for me," and all I could muster was a yeah, and I really wanted to tell him at length how grand. I can do that now, and that is the truth now. And he knew that. He knew I'd be having this conversation, so to speak, so to speak. It reminds me of in the Upanishads, there's this great occasion where the gods, men, and demons come to the great guru of all, knower of all, teller of all, seer of all. And the demons come and say, "Oh, great guru of all, knower of all, teller of all, we're demons, you got any advice for us?" And he gets, "Da, have you understood?" And they said, "Yes." "Dayana, mercy." And he says, "Yes, you've understood." And the humans come to him and they say, "Oh, guru of all, teller of all, knower of all, we're humans, you got any advice for us?" And he says, "Yes." "Da, have you understood?" And they said, "Yes." "Data, give." He says, "Yes, you've understood." And the gods come and they're like, "Hey, guru of all, teller of all, knower of all, we're gods, we're cool. But you got any advice for us?" And he says, "Da, have you understood?" And they went, "Yes." "Dayana, restraint." He says, "Yes, you've understood." So when you're with demons, mercy, da. And when you're human, serve, give, da. And when you're feeling a little free, show a little restraint, da. The thunder sound. Anybody else?
Just, love this Leela, beautiful Leela.
Thank you. Well, I'm so happy to be still in the breathing.
I have one more question considering in relation to Vivaya Samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
Did you need to go through a real grieving process?
No, I didn't.
Not at all.
Everybody's in a perfect place. I learned from that. People who had the great good fortune of being around him grieved, and people who have never met him and the person didn't grieve so much, and there's a kind of a rightness to where everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
My lack of feeling shows itself again, I would say, and I'm heartened by the truth that yesterday never happened. There's only this moment. I love you. Do you want to play? And so that interrupts most of my grieving. It's always where if I want to spend time thinking about what I should have done, it's way better to praise him now. That's a better option. It's not a spiritual bypass. It is a standing in the place where I am an idiot, self-concerned and all that, and there opening and recreating this moment of being in love, feeling him, remembering him, picking up that stick again.
Instead of dwelling on the past and what was not.
He has set me free from many things, as he has us all. True. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Everybody send in their money. To Anka, send her to Naitamba.
She's getting close.
Yes, ticket is almost in.
What is that? You've got it almost?
The ticket is almost in.
I think it's almost in.
Oh, good. Danke.
One, I don't know if this is a question, but it's a remark from Sur Jayi. Why isn't the world in knowing of beloved? Why are so many oblivious? It's completely.
I asked myself the same question about myself. That's all I can say. As he says, when people ask him, where did it come from, this self-contraction? it's presently arising. It's not causative. There is no reason to be happy. As he says, that you can be happy with nothing. It's not a causative event. And when I only have to look in the mirror to find out why people don't know, why don't I know? I've been given endless grace, unfathomable grace. I should be doing cartwheels in the street every day in joy and ecstasy. And, I'm pretty happy. I live in grace. I live in His grace, no doubt. But what He's given us, as He says, just like He says, I want you to use me for a lot more than getting out of trouble. I only have to look at myself to see that failure. And so to look out into the world is a diversion to the responsibility that I find in the mirror. Anything else?
You never had a desire to become enlightened, to get into the place of beloved?
Well, of course, every time, all the time.
All the time?
Well, not enough, obviously, but
That's why I'm asking.
I want to breathe Him in depth every breath. That's I have that as that's clear enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my life, and I accept it as it is, and that's a clear vision I have regularly, to adapt this body-mind complex, put it in order so that I can enter His divine domain and breathe Him perfectly, in depth, fully. So that's what's in front of me. So,
That's a big thing already, I would say.
well, yeah. It's not nothing in that sense. Anything else? And then we'll be gone. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your blessings.
The heart falls and rises and meets in the middle of the one heart. And Sasha says, thank you, Da.
How many people are online?
Okay, well, great. Thank you all. Da. Well,
Your pen.
thank you. How'd we do? Did we give them their full money's worth?
It's a good question.
We should serve the world in this manner.
Yeah, I want a copy, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
So when you get done fundraising, I'll use it.
yeah, for sure.
You ready?
Yeah.
That's
nice.
So that was it, people. For it's a live stream. Yeah. And I'm going to close off now.
Okay.
Yeah. 10:30.
10:30.
Yeah.
Was it 9:03?
Mhm. So thank you so much for attending. I hope you have all greatly enjoyed and benefited and feel instructed by Frank's amazing Leelas. The pirate island was my favorite. Yeah, I am speechless. Sergei, Frank, Anke, oh thank you. You're very, very welcome. Simon, thank you so much. I thank you too for attending and linking me to Sasha and the Brazilian community. And for now, just enjoy your evening or day, depending on where you are in the world. And we'll keep on fundraising until I have at first a flight ticket and complete 4K in total. So the fundraiser will keep my life busy, as it should. If you have any ideas or suggestions or projects that I could take on or collaborate in with you in order to raise the additional money that is needed, feel free to drop me a PM. I am open to anything. Simon yesterday suggested that I organize a follow-up Leelas of Love event after returning from Naitamba. So I can share, I can do the same, but then it's me going to be sitting in the chair sharing. If that interests you, let me know. I would love to do so. Somebody is definitely into that. Okay, well, I'll definitely go for that then. It's hard. There is a much less mind active after so many amazing Leelas, but let's just close it off for now and sending you lots of love from the Hofje at the European Tanda, and see you next time. Bye bye.